David had just returned home after a long day of work. He kicked off his shoes, stretched his tired muscles, and sighed with relief as he walked through the door of his luxurious house. The evening air was cool and he was ready to unwind. But as he entered the living room, something completely unexpected stopped him in his tracks. His son Ethan was sitting on the floor, his face lit up with excitement. And sitting next to him was a girl, no, not a girl, an alien. David blinked twice, certain he was seeing things. The girl was small, with smooth silver skin that glowed faintly under the soft lighting. Her eyes were large, almost black, and seemed to shine with an inner light. Her hair was like strands of glowing fibers shimmering in all different colors. She didn't look like anything David had ever seen before, and she was sitting there, as calm as could be, teaching his son. For a moment, David stood frozen in disbelief. What was going on? How did she get into his house? He couldn't understand how she had appeared there so suddenly. His mind raced with questions. He was a wealthy man with a strong sense of security and privacy. How could something like this slip past him? Ethan? David finally managed to call out, his voice shaky. Ethan looked up, his face lighting up even more. Dad, you won't believe it. This girl, she's amazing. She's teaching me all about the stars and how they're connected to Earth. David's heart pounded in his chest. His son, the quiet and shy boy he had raised on his own, was talking about stars like he had known them his whole life. He could barely believe what he was hearing. What do you mean, teaching you about the stars? David asked, his voice rising slightly in panic. Who is she? What is she doing here? The alien girl turned her head towards David and gave him a soft, mysterious smile. I am Zara, she said, her voice calm and almost soothing. I'm here to teach Ethan. I have knowledge beyond your understanding. David felt his stomach drop. Teach Ethan? Why? How did you even get in here? His voice was sharp, the panic growing as he moved closer to them, eyeing the girl warily. He had never been one to jump to conclusions, but this was far beyond anything he could understand. Zara didn't seem intimidated. Instead, she simply nodded. I entered through a place you cannot see. I have been watching him for a while. He has a special connection with the stars, and I'm here to help him understand it. David felt his chest tighten. What are you talking about? You can't just come in here and... Zara raised one hand, cutting him off gently. Please allow me to explain, she said. I know this is strange to you, but Ethan is important. He doesn't know it yet, but his destiny is connected to a greater power, one that spans galaxies. David took a step back, his mind spinning. His son was sitting on the floor listening to this alien as if everything was normal. Was Ethan in danger? Or was this some kind of sick joke? Ethan, David said, his voice trembling now. Is this some kind of game? What is she talking about? Ethan looked up at his father, his face filled with wonder. It's not a game, Dad. She's telling me about things I've never heard before. She said the stars are like a map and that the universe is so much bigger than we think. David felt a cold sweat forming on his forehead. This couldn't be happening. His mind raced. How had he never noticed anything strange? The house was equipped with cameras, motion sensors, and security systems that had never failed. And yet this girl, this alien, was sitting in his living room calmly teaching his son things that defied all logic. How did you get past my security? David asked, still trying to make sense of what was happening. His voice was stern, but underneath there was an undercurrent of fear. He wasn't used to feeling this powerless. Zara didn't seem fazed by his question. Your security is built for human threats, but I'm not human, she said simply. I am from a distant planet and I have the ability to move unseen by your technology. David's mind raced. Was this some kind of advanced human technology he didn't understand? But that didn't make sense either. He looked back at Ethan, who was smiling at Zara like she was an old friend. How could this be happening? Ethan, I need you to come with me, David said firmly, trying to keep his voice steady. We're going inside and talking about this right now. But Ethan shook his head. Dad, please listen. Zara is helping me understand things. I have so many questions about the universe, and she can answer them. I think this is important. David felt like the world was spinning. How could this be real? How could this alien girl who didn't belong to Earth be teaching his son about things he couldn't even begin to understand? As David stood there watching Zara's calm, serene expression, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if everything he thought he knew about the world was wrong? Zara had no intention of leaving, and neither, it seemed, did Ethan. David's head was spinning as he tried to process everything. His son Ethan was sitting cross-legged on the floor, absorbed in conversation with the strange alien girl, Zara. David's pulse quickened. The glowing lights in Zara's eyes seemed to flicker with an almost hypnotic rhythm, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she was more than just a teacher. She was a catalyst for something bigger. "Ethan, come here," David said, his voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk now." Ethan looked up at his father, his face filled with confusion. "But Dad, Zara's showing me things about the stars, about the universe. You don't understand." David felt his stomach tighten. He had always tried to encourage Ethan's curiosity. But this was beyond anything he could have prepared for. "I don't care about the stars, Ethan. I care about you. This girl could be dangerous. We need to get her out of here." But Zara, who had been silent up until that moment, stood up with ease and walked over to David. "I'm not dangerous, David," she said softly, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here to teach him. Your son is special. He has abilities that you haven't yet discovered." David stepped back, his mind racing. "Abilities? What are you talking about? He's just a normal kid." Zara shook her head, her glowing eyes fixing on Ethan as she spoke. "No, he's not. And that's why I'm here. Ethan has a deep connection to the stars. He can see patterns in the sky that no human can. He has the potential to change the way you understand the universe, but he needs guidance. I can give him that guidance." David stared at her, trying to process the words she was saying. He glanced at Ethan, whose face was now filled with excitement, as though Zara's every word was a revelation. It was hard for David to believe, but at the same time he could feel something in the air, something undeniable. It was as if Ethan had been awakened to something far beyond what David could offer. David's voice grew more forceful. "No, Zara. I don't know who or what you are, but you're not staying here. You need to leave. This is insane." But Zara simply smiled, an almost pitying look in her eyes. "You don't understand yet, but you will. I can show you things, David. Things that will open your eyes to the truth. Things that will explain why I'm here, why your son is important." David clenched his fists. His mind was filled with a whirlwind of questions. Who was this girl? What did she want with Ethan? And why was she so calm, as if she already knew everything? She wasn't scared of him, wasn't afraid of his wealth or power, something David wasn't used to. Most people were, but Zara, she acted like she had seen and done things that David couldn't even imagine. Ethan, still sitting on the floor, spoke up. "Dad, please listen. Zara has been telling me about the stars, about how they're all connected. She's showing me how the universe works. It's incredible." David took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. He couldn't lose control now. He needed to understand what was going on. He had to protect his son, but what if Zara wasn't a threat? What if she was telling the truth? "What do you mean, connected?" David asked, looking at Zara. "What does Ethan have to do with the stars?" Zara walked toward the window, looking out at the night sky. "The universe is a vast network, David. It's not random, not chaotic. It's all connected, with every living being playing a part in the grand design. Your son has the ability to understand this connection, to see it where others can't. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help him unlock his potential." David frowned. This was too much. His mind couldn't keep up. "So you're saying Ethan has some kind of superpower?" Zara's smile widened. "In a way, yes. He doesn't have the power you think of, like strength or speed. But his mind, his understanding of the world, it's different. He can see patterns in the stars that others can't. He's a learner, David, a discoverer, and soon he will begin to see things that will change everything." David was silent for a long moment. He looked at Ethan, who was now staring out the window with wide eyes, clearly captivated by Zara's words. Ethan was so young, too young to understand the weight of what Zara was saying. David's heart ached. Was he really ready to let Ethan learn from this mysterious alien girl? Zara spoke again, her voice soft and calm. "You may not believe me, but you will soon. In time, David, you will see. There are bigger things at play here than you know. Your son is part of something much bigger than all of us, but he can't do it alone. He needs me." David felt a shiver run down his spine. He wanted to protect his son, but how could he protect him from something he didn't understand? How could he fight against a force so powerful, so mysterious? In that moment, he realized something. This wasn't just about protecting Ethan anymore. This was about something much greater, a fate that neither of them could control. "I don't know what to do," David whispered, feeling more helpless than ever. Zara turned to him, her glowing eyes full of understanding. You don't have to do anything yet. Just trust me. Trust Ethan. The journey will begin soon. The days following Zara's arrival felt like a blur for David. Every moment seemed to be filled with confusion, disbelief, and a growing sense of unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life had been turned upside down, and yet he knew he couldn't just ignore what was happening in his own home. There was something undeniably powerful about Zara and the connection she had with his son. Ethan had never been this passionate or eager to learn before. It was as if Zara had unlocked a side of him that David never knew existed. But David couldn't let go of the nagging suspicion that there was more to Zara's story than she was letting on. Why had she come to Earth? Why his son? And why did she insist that Ethan was somehow special? One evening, as the soft glow of the sunset bathed the living room, David decided to confront Zara. Ethan was upstairs, reading one of the books Zara had given him, a book about distant galaxies and stars that David didn't recognize. It seemed like every day Ethan became more absorbed in Zara's teachings. David couldn't stand by and let this happen without understanding the full picture. Zara, David called, his voice more firm than before. She had been sitting on the couch, flipping through a strange device in her hands, watching a series of images that flickered too fast for David to catch. At the sound of his voice, she looked up, her large eyes locking onto his. Yes, David? Zara's tone was calm, but David could sense an underlying urgency. I need to know the truth. I need to understand why you're here, he said, stepping closer. His voice wavered between frustration and fear. What is it that you want from Ethan? Why him? Zara paused, her eyes softening. She set the device aside and stood up, her smooth silver skin catching the last rays of the sun. David, I understand your concern. You're scared. You don't know me, and I'm asking you to trust me with your son's future. David's chest tightened. I don't trust you. I trust my son. And that's why I'm asking, why is he important? Why does it have to be Ethan? Zara took a deep breath, her expression growing serious. She walked toward the window, staring at the stars in the sky as if searching for the right words. The universe is vast, David, far beyond what you can imagine, and there are forces in this universe that seek to control it. There are others, more powerful beings who wish to bend the fabric of the cosmos to their will. David frowned. And you think Ethan can stop them? He's just a kid, Zara nodded slowly. Ethan has the potential to change everything. He is connected to something ancient, something that exists within the very stars themselves. His ability to see patterns in the cosmos, to understand them in a way no human ever could. It's not something he was born with. It's something I've awakened within him. David's mind raced. What are you saying? That you've awakened him somehow? Yes, Zara replied, turning to face him fully. I am part of a group of beings tasked with finding individuals like Ethan. People who have the ability to see beyond the limits of human understanding. People who can comprehend the universe's deeper truths. David's voice was sharp now. So you're saying that Ethan is some kind of chosen one? That he's meant to save the universe? Zara's eyes shimmered as she nodded. In a way, yes. Ethan's connection to the stars isn't just about knowledge. It's about power. He is one of the few humans capable of harnessing that power. He will play a role in something much bigger. A force that will either help save Earth or bring it to its end. David felt a cold shiver run through him. What do you mean, help save Earth? What's really going on here, Zara? Zara paused, her expression hardening. There are those who would use Ethan's abilities for their own gain. They are already searching for him. And once they find him, they will stop at nothing to control him. David's mind was spinning. Who are these people? What do they want with my son? Zara's gaze darkened. They are not human, David. They are from a race far older than any you could imagine. They want to control the universe, reshape it in their image. And to do that, they need Ethan. David's heart pounded. His eyes darted to the door as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. So you've brought him into this fight? You've brought him into danger? Zara's voice softened, almost regretful. I didn't want to, David, but I had no choice. Ethan's abilities are rare and they can't be ignored. I've protected him for as long as I can, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. David took a deep breath, his mind racing. Help? How can I help? I'm just a businessman. I don't have the power to fight whatever this is. Zara moved closer to him, her eyes full of quiet determination. You have something more important than power, David. You have your son. And that's all I need. David stared at her, his chest tight. It felt like the walls were closing in around him. What do you want me to do? What are you asking of me? Zara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to look at the stars outside the window once more. I need you to protect Ethan. I need you to keep him safe until he's ready to understand his full potential. But time is running out, David. The ones who want him are getting closer. We don't have much time. David's mind was reeling, but in the midst of the chaos, one thing stood clear. He couldn't ignore what Zara was saying. There was something far bigger than himself at play. Something that would change the fate of Earth. And no matter how terrified he was, he knew there was only one thing he could do. I'll protect him, David said, his voice steady but full of fear. But I need answers. And I need them now. Zara gave him a small, knowing smile. I will give you those answers, David. But first, we need to prepare. The journey is about to begin. As David looked at her, he realized this wasn't just about protecting Ethan. This was about something much larger. A destiny that David wasn't sure he was ready for, but that he would have no choice but to face. The days after Zara's revelation felt like they were moving in slow motion. David couldn't shake the unsettling feeling in the pit of his stomach. Every time he looked at his son, Ethan, he couldn't help but wonder if Zara was telling the truth. Was his son really special? Was he destined to play a role in some cosmic battle? The thought was so far-fetched that David could hardly believe it, but the signs were there. Ethan's fascination with the stars, his sudden bursts of insight into things he couldn't possibly understand. It was all too strange to ignore. And then there were the strange occurrences that started happening around the house. It began with little things. A door left open when David was sure he had locked it, the lights flickering unexpectedly. But over time, they escalated into something far more unsettling. One night, as David sat alone in his study, he heard a faint sound coming from the backyard. It was almost like a whisper, soft and distant. When he looked out the window, there was nothing there. Just the empty yard, bathed in the glow of the streetlights. But it wasn't the first time David had heard that whisper. Every time he tried to ignore it, it seemed to come back stronger. And then, there was the feeling. It was as if the house itself was alive, watching him. And worse, it felt like someone or something was always watching Ethan. The next day, David decided to investigate. He asked Zara about the strange occurrences, but she only looked at him with that same calm expression she always wore. They are connected to the energy, she said simply. It's not just a coincidence. What energy? David demanded. Is this some kind of trick? Zara shook her head slowly, her eyes glowing with that familiar light. No trick. The energy I'm talking about is ancient. It's the force that binds everything together. It's what connects the stars to the planets to each other, and even the lives of humans. Ethan has tapped into it. That's why things are changing. David felt his skin prickle with unease. What was she talking about? He glanced at Ethan, who was playing quietly in the corner, his attention on a small glowing device Zara had given him. His son was so absorbed in it that he didn't even notice the change in atmosphere. David, Zara continued, there are forces that want to take Ethan. They feel his connection to this energy, and they will stop at nothing to capture him. You've already seen the signs, the whispers, the strange occurrences. They are all a part of it. David's mind raced. You mean to say that these forces are already here? That they're watching us? Zara nodded. They've always been here, but they're getting closer. The energy Ethan has awakened is too powerful for them to ignore. They want to use it for their own purposes. David's heart raced. He thought of the flickering lights, the whispers at night, and the feeling of being watched. Was this what Zara had been trying to warn him about? And who were these forces? He had to find out more, before it was too late. That evening, as David walked through the house, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He checked the security cameras as a precaution, but the footage was unsettling. The cameras outside his house showed nothing. No figures, no movement. But the footage from inside the house was different. The footage from the living room showed Ethan sitting alone, his eyes closed as if in deep thought. But then, for just a split second, the image shifted, distorted like static on a television screen. David stared at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. It was as if the room itself had shifted in that brief moment, as if something was out of place. David rewound the footage, watching again and again, but the distortion was gone. It was impossible to explain. He rubbed his eyes, but the feeling remained. There was something about the house, something that didn't make sense. But what? What was happening to his home? The next day, David drove to a local expert in astrophysics, hoping to find some answers. He told the scientist, Dr. Harrison, about Ethan's strange behavior and Zara's cryptic warnings. At first, Dr. Harrison had been skeptical, but after listening to David's account, his expression grew serious. "Mr. Brooks," Dr. Harrison said, his voice low, "I've heard similar reports from other sources. People who claim to have experienced strange, unexplainable phenomena. It's not a coincidence. The universe is far more complex than we understand, and there are forces out there, energies that we are only beginning to understand. You're not the only one who's seen signs of them." David's eyes widened. "What kind of forces? What does this all mean for my son?" Dr. Harrison hesitated. "What you're describing sounds like cosmic interference. It's as if there's a rip in the fabric of reality, a tear in the space-time continuum. Some individuals are naturally attuned to these energies. It's possible your son Ethan has become one of them." David felt his breath catch in his throat. "Are you saying my son is connected to this rip? To the forces Zara was talking about?" Dr. Harrison nodded grimly. "It's the only explanation that fits. But if Ethan is indeed connected to this energy, there are others who will be coming for him. Forces that want to use his abilities, or worse, destroy him." David felt like the world was crashing down around him. His son was in danger, and the universe itself was somehow involved. He had no idea how to protect Ethan from what was coming, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't do it alone. As he left Dr. Harrison's office, the weight of the situation pressed down on him. He thought about the whispers, the strange energy, and the growing feeling of being watched. And then it hit him. They weren't just watching anymore. They were closing in. The forces Zara had warned him about were here, and they weren't going away. David stood in the living room, his mind racing, heart hammering in his chest. He could feel the walls closing in. He thought he was protecting his son from a simple misunderstanding, a strange alien girl, an innocent fascination with the stars. But everything he'd learned over the past week was unraveling his reality, piece by piece. Ethan wasn't just interested in the stars. He was connected to them, and Zara wasn't just some lost traveler. She was here to protect him, to prepare him. But now something far more terrifying was happening. The strange occurrences that had plagued the house, the whispers, the flickering lights, had intensified. It wasn't just the house anymore, it was everywhere. David could feel an undeniable presence, something watching, something waiting. And it wasn't long before it made itself known. It was late one night when the true nature of the danger revealed itself. Ethan had just finished one of his lessons with Zara, his eyes wide and full of wonder as always. But something in the air was different this time. David could feel it, an electric tension hanging in the space between them. Zara had been quiet all evening, watching Ethan with an unreadable expression, her glowing eyes never leaving him. Without warning, the front door slammed open, a gust of wind howling through the house. David's heart leaped into his throat. He rushed to the door, his mind filled with dread, but no one was there. He looked around, nothing. But something had shifted. He could feel it now in his bones. The presence that had been following them was no longer subtle. It was here. Zara was at his side in an instant, her voice low and urgent. "They found us." David's blood ran cold. Who's found us?" "They've come for Ethan," Zara said, her expression grim. "The ones I warned you about. The ones who want his power. The ones who will stop at nothing to take him." David's mind raced. "But I thought you said you were protecting him. How could they have found us so quickly?" Zara's eyes softened for a moment. "I've kept him safe for as long as I could, but I can't keep him hidden forever. The energy inside him, the connection to the stars, it's too powerful to ignore. And now they know. They're here, David, and they won't stop until they have him." David's hands clenched into fists, anger and fear bubbling up inside him. What do they want with him? Why is he so important? Zara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Ethan is the key to something much bigger than you realize." His connection to the energy. It's not just about power. It's about control. If they capture him, they can control the very fabric of the universe itself. David couldn't breathe. The weight of Zara's words settled heavily on his chest. Control the fabric of the universe? He tried to wrap his mind around it, but it was too much. His son, his little boy, was somehow tied to something so vast, so dangerous that even David couldn't comprehend it. Before he could ask more questions, the house shook. A loud, deafening sound vibrated through the walls like thunder echoing through the air. David grabbed Zara's arm, his heart racing. What's happening? What was that? Zara's face had gone pale. They're here. They've breached the perimeter. David turned to look at Ethan, who was standing in the hallway, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. The strange device Zara had been using earlier was now glowing brightly in Ethan's hands, almost like it was reacting to something. Zara rushed to Ethan's side, kneeling down in front of him. Ethan, listen to me. You need to focus. You have to tap into the energy. Use it. Now. David watched, frozen, as Zara spoke to Ethan in a language he couldn't understand. It was a soft rhythmic sound, almost like a song, but filled with power. David didn't know what Zara was doing, but he knew one thing. This wasn't just a lesson anymore. It was a battle. Suddenly, the door to the living room burst open and a figure stepped inside. It was tall, with dark metallic skin and glowing eyes. Not human. The creature didn't speak, but its presence filled the room with an oppressive weight. Behind it, more figures followed. More of them. All with the same dark, otherworldly appearance. David's body froze. He had never been in a situation like this. This wasn't some fight he could win. These creatures weren't of this world. They were beyond his understanding, beyond his control. The leader of the creatures raised a hand, and with a single motion, the room darkened. David felt an unnatural cold seep into his bones, and for a moment he couldn't move. The creatures were closing in on Ethan. The energy in the room was thick, crackling like static in the air. Zara stepped forward, blocking their path. "Stay away from him," she commanded, her voice filled with a newfound strength. The creatures paused, but only for a moment. "This child is ours," the leader of the creatures said, its voice low and unsettling. "He belongs to us to control." David stepped forward, his fear now mixed with rage. "No, he's my son. He belongs with me." Zara turned to David, her eyes filled with regret. "David, you have to understand. If they take him now, the universe will fall into chaos. The balance will be destroyed." David didn't care about the balance of the universe. He only cared about his son. "You'll have to go through me first," David growled. But Zara stepped in front of him, shaking her head. "David, don't. This isn't something you can fight. You have to protect him. Let me handle this." David looked at Ethan, who was still holding the glowing device. He didn't understand it. None of this made sense, but he understood one thing. If he didn't act now, if he didn't protect Ethan, they would lose everything. The air in the room was thick with tension, as if the very fabric of reality itself had been stretched to its breaking point. The creatures, these otherworldly beings who had come for Ethan, were closing in. Their presence weighed on David's chest like an invisible force. Zara, standing in front of him and his son, looked calm, but David could see the strain in her eyes. She was trying to protect them, but David could feel it. This was no ordinary fight. The creatures, tall and imposing with their metallic skin and glowing eyes, didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to instill fear, to make every instinct in David's body scream at him to protect his son, to run, to fight. But it was as if his body refused to obey. Zara's voice cut through the silence, soft but firm. "David, you have to make a choice," she said, her words laced with urgency. "If you fight them now, you'll lose Ethan. You won't be able to protect him. You have to trust me. I can stop them, but I need your help." David's head was spinning. What kind of choice was this? Lose his son? Trust Zara, an alien he barely knew, who claimed to be protecting his son for some cosmic reason he still didn't understand? He looked at Ethan, who stood beside Zara, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. The glowing device in his hand hummed with energy, its light flickering in time with his heartbeat. "No, I'm not leaving him," David snapped, stepping forward. His heart was a pounding drum in his chest, and his mind was filled with a singular thought. Protect Ethan. Always protect him. Zara's expression softened. "You don't understand. If you force this battle, you risk Ethan's life. If they capture him, if they use him, they'll destroy everything. The universe will collapse into chaos. I'm not just asking for your trust, I'm asking you to help me guide him." David's fists clenched. His gaze shifted from Zara to the leader of the creatures. The being stood silently as if waiting for the inevitable. David's legs trembled, but he stood firm. How could he let them take Ethan? He had to do something. What kind of help do you need? David demanded. You're telling me my son has some kind of power, but how am I supposed to trust you? Zara turned, her gaze meeting his with intensity. The power Ethan has is not his alone. It is the power of the stars, the energy that binds the galaxies together. He doesn't control it yet, he doesn't even understand it. But I can help him unlock it. And you can help him too, David. You have to believe in him. David's stomach twisted. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. Stars, power? The leader of the creatures, unmoving, spoke again, its voice a low rumble. He will not choose you. You are insignificant to the universe. He will come with us. David's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He wanted to scream at the creature, to throw himself between Ethan and these monstrous beings. But Zara's hand on his arm stopped him. David, please. Zara's voice was filled with quiet desperation. This is bigger than both of us. This is Ethan's path. He has to make the choice. He has to choose to embrace this power, to become what he was always meant to be. David's eyes darted to Ethan, who was standing still, watching him. The boy's face was filled with confusion, but there was something else there too, something deep. He was scared, yes, but there was a quiet determination, a resolve that David hadn't seen before. What if he's not ready? David whispered. What if he can't do it? Zara's gaze softened. He is ready. He just doesn't know it yet. Ethan, who had been silent for so long, suddenly spoke, his voice small but steady. Dad, I have to do this. I don't know why, but I do. I don't want to be afraid anymore. David's heart cracked at the sound of his son's voice. He wanted to protect him, to shield him from the weight of the world. But Ethan had already made his choice. There was no turning back now. David turned to Zara, his eyes filled with uncertainty. What do I do? Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression one of quiet confidence. Let him go, David. Let him face it. I'll guide him, but you have to trust that this is his path. You have to trust that by doing nothing, you are doing everything. The leader of the creatures stepped forward, its dark eyes glowing with anticipation. The boy belongs to us. Time is running out. David's chest tightened. His son, his little boy, was caught in the middle of something far bigger than he could comprehend. And yet, in that moment, he realized something he hadn't understood before. Ethan wasn't just his son anymore. He wasn't just a scared boy who needed his father's protection. Ethan had the power to change everything, and that power was not his to control. David looked at Ethan, really looked at him. The boy was standing there, eyes full of fear, yes, but also courage. And in that moment, David knew what he had to do. He couldn't hold Ethan back. He couldn't try to protect him from this fate. Do it, David said, his voice barely a whisper, thick with emotion. I trust you. Zara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. She stepped back, giving Ethan space to move. The room was silent as the creatures waited for their moment to strike. But Ethan raised the glowing device in his hand, and for the first time, David saw the true extent of the power that lay within his son. Ethan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then, with a single motion, unleashed the energy inside him. The room exploded with light. The air crackled with an electric force that seemed to rip through everything. David staggered back, shielding his eyes from the intense glow. The creatures hissed, recoiling from the power. David didn't know what was happening, but he felt it. He felt the shift in the universe. The moment Ethan chose his path, his destiny, it had begun. The light that erupted from Ethan was blinding, engulfing everything in its path. David squinted, shielding his eyes as the air around them seemed to warp, crackling with energy. His heart raced, his pulse pounding in his ears. This was no ordinary power. This was something beyond comprehension, something otherworldly. Ethan stood at the center of the room, his body trembling with the force of the energy radiating from him. His eyes were closed, his face a mask of concentration. The glowing device in his hands buzzed and pulsed, its light a swirling vortex of colors that seemed to change with every heartbeat. David could barely catch his breath, the room thick with tension. The creatures, the ones who had come for Ethan, recoiled from the light, their metallic skin shimmering like the surface of water disturbed by a stone. They hissed, their voices low and guttural, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they circled, waiting, like predators sensing weakness. This is it, Zara whispered, standing beside David, her voice barely audible over the hum of Ethan's power. Ethan has tapped into the energy, but he needs to harness it fully. The more he uses it, the stronger it gets. He's controlling it now, but if he loses focus, they'll take him. David's mind raced, the urgency in Zara's words sinking in. If Ethan loses focus, the thought was enough to freeze him in place. His son, glowing with the power of the stars, was still a child. How could he fight these creatures? These beings who were older and more powerful than anything David could comprehend. As if on cue, the leader of the creatures took a step forward. Its glowing eyes locked onto Ethan, narrowing in defiance. You cannot control what is beyond you, child. You are but a spark in a storm. Surrender and we will grant you mercy. Resist and you will burn. The words sent a shiver down David's spine. He wanted to shout, to tell the creatures to leave his son alone, but he couldn't. All he could do was watch as Ethan fought to maintain control over the chaotic energy swirling around him. Zara stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. He will not surrender. Not to you, and neither will I. The creatures hissed, their forms shifting as they prepared to strike. David felt the weight of the situation settle heavily on his shoulders. There was nothing he could do to stop them, nothing that would matter unless Ethan held his ground. This was his son's battle, and it was up to him to decide the fate of their world. In a moment of clarity, David's fear began to subside. He knew what he had to do. He moved toward Ethan, who was still standing tall, his face drawn in concentration, his hands outstretched toward the creatures. Without thinking, David reached out and placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Ethan, you're not alone, David said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I believe in you. You've got this. The universe is yours. For a brief moment, Ethan's eyes flickered open, his gaze locking onto his father's. The power within him surged, and David felt a strange warmth spread through his body, a connection that went beyond words. It was as if for a moment they were one, father and son united by something greater than themselves. The universe, the energy, the power, it all flowed between them in that instant. Ethan's eyes glowed brighter, his body surrounded by an ethereal light. He inhaled deeply, and the swirling energy around him surged, expanding outward like a wave crashing against the shore. The creatures hesitated for a split second, their expressions shifting from confidence to uncertainty. Now, Zara shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. Focus, Ethan. You have to focus. This is your moment. Ethan nodded, his focus unwavering. He raised his hands, palms facing the creatures, and the light around him intensified, blasting forward in a wave of pure energy. It wasn't just a physical force, it was a presence, a wave of cosmic power that rippled through the room, through the fabric of space itself. The creatures screamed, their bodies contorting as the light touched them. The energy surged, unrelenting until they were forced back, stumbling and shrieking in agony. The leader of the creatures roared, its voice a thunderous echo, but it couldn't stop the force that Ethan had unleashed. David felt a surge of hope rise within him as the creatures faltered, their confidence shattered. Ethan was in control now. His son, the boy who had been so afraid, so uncertain, had found his strength, his purpose. And with that power, he was protecting them all. But just as quickly as the energy had surged, it began to settle. The creatures, burned and weakened by the cosmic force, staggered backward. The room fell silent, save for the hum of the energy still lingering in the air. Ethan's hands dropped to his sides, the light around him dimming as the power within him receded. David rushed to his son's side, his heart pounding. Ethan, you did it. You stopped them. Ethan, breathing heavily, looked up at his father with wide eyes. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could feel that. Zara stepped forward, her expression filled with pride. You did more than you could ever imagine, Ethan. You've embraced your destiny. And now the universe is in your hands. The creatures, beaten but not destroyed, began to retreat, their forms dissolving into the shadows. The leader turned one last time, its voice bitter. This isn't over, child. The forces of the universe are not so easily defeated. We will return. But before it could vanish completely, Ethan raised a hand, and with one final wave of energy, the creatures were gone, banished into the ether from which they had come. David looked at his son, his heart swelling with pride. You did it, Ethan. You saved us. For the first time in days, David felt at peace. The fight wasn't over, but the weight that had pressed on him for so long was finally lifted. He had believed in his son, And now Ethan had shown him just how powerful that belief could be. The universe was vast, full of unknowns and dangers, but together they could face anything. And whatever came next, David knew they would face it as a family. Together.